Welcome back, everybody, to Teaching with Magic, the series where we look at how to use the techniques of the Disney Imagineers to make your classroom the happiest place on Earth. Today's topic, weenies and posters. It's a fun one. Now, stick with me. I'll explain. It all makes a lot of sense. So, weenies, then, are, in Disney speak, big visual objects used to draw in your attention. So, perfect example, the Matterhorn. As you see here, you're driving down the 5 freeway, you see that off the road, you're drawn in. You want to go see what's going on over there. There's plenty of them throughout the park. Sleeping Beauty's castle is probably an even better example when you're inside, how it draws you down to the end of Main Street. The idea actually comes from old theater days with Walt, where they would literally use a hot dog weenie to lead animals stage right or stage left. So it is a way to guide your audience to pay attention to what you want them to pay attention to. And it's a fairly simple technique, but it's really cool, and Disney uses it all over the place. So here's a clip from the movie Saving Mr. Banks, which is a cool movie about Walt Disney, if you didn't know that. And here it's showing Disneyland back in the early 60s, most likely. And over here on the left, you can see at the entranceway to Disneyland are a couple of really tall banner-looking posters. So Disneyland is well known for their attraction posters. When you enter the park today, they're in the tunnels on both sides of you. But when they first opened the park, the posters were actually aligned right in front of you when you walked in on that central gate. So when you walked in the front entrance, you saw the posters teasing the coming attractions, just like you were walking into a movie theater lobby. That was the idea. So if you continue on in the movie, you'll see a little bit closer here. You can see the posters here in the background, layering all the way across that fence. So they're not there anymore, but they were used as a tease. A lot of people were unfamiliar, at the very least, with what Disneyland was. You know, you had the Disneyland TV show that kind of brought people in. But this idea was you see the poster and you're like, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do. I recently came across this book, which is incredible, called Poster Art of the Disney Parks. It is a wonderful coffee table book that collects these posters from throughout Disney history, put together by Disney Imagineering themselves. Really cool book. I highly recommend you check it out. Inside the book, you'll see the old posters, the new posters. They're really cool. Here's some of the old ones, some of the well-known ones. This one still hangs in the front entryway on the right side of Disneyland when you come in. This is the one for Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Now, the older ones have a very distinctive retro feel, and the reason for that was because of the poster making process, which is actually really cool to outline in the book. The newer ones look much more modern, so don't feel like they have to all have this retro feel, but many of the old ones certainly do. So I'm looking at these and thinking to myself, how can I use this in the classroom? What can I do to make this fit what I'm doing? So I decided to take my lesson types, I have a few big lesson types that I do throughout the year, and see if I could turn them into movie posters. And here's a few of what I came up with. Here's the very first one that I did. This was for our History Mysteries. Obviously the idea we were going for here is Sherlock Holmes. Adding the little brain and the fingerprint, very, very cool. It kind of has a psycho motif to it, thanks to my brother for kind of throwing the Hitchcock references into that one. At the top for our actors, we have the different historical figures that we learn about in these different activities. And then down at the bottom in the billing, it reads a description of the lesson as opposed to saying, you know, touchstone pictures or whatever. And so this one just says, Magical History Adventure presents an opportunity to investigate unsolved mysteries in history like a detective by examining artifacts, analyzing crime scenes, and interviewing witnesses. Pretty cool. Here's another one that I did very recently. This one more of a teaser, so it doesn't have the billing at the bottom. This is the one for my Conquest unit that I intend to use. Just simply saying, this is coming. Something that'll be visual for students to see to draw them in. And then this one for Weigh the Evidence, really kind of stylized and stylish. Has a similar feel to the first one in terms of layout, but the idea of, again, characters at the top, description at the bottom. My vision for this is that when I get these printed, and I've printed a couple of them, they look gorgeous. When I get them all done and printed, this is my plan. We have this huge, big, empty wall between my classroom and my colleague next door. We both teach 7th grade world history, use very similar lessons, and we want to hang it like a movie theater lobby. We want these full-size 3x2 posters hanging from the wall. So that is the long-term vision. So the question then becomes, How do you do it? How do you make these posters? Well, they're a lot easier than making videos, a lot easier than some of the other things that I've shown and will be showing. So let's jump right into it. And of course, we're going to start in my very favorite program. Let's jump over to PowerPoint. So in PowerPoint, as usual, we're going to start ourselves with a blank presentation. Just double click there. Now here's where it gets a little different. The posters are not stretched quite like this. So when you go to the Design tab and you click on Slide Size, you can do a custom slide size. What we're going to do is create our canvas. And we want our canvas to be 24 by 36. That's a little different than the standard movie poster, but this is a very standard size for printing. And so it comes out a lot cheaper, and it's close enough to a movie poster. So this doesn't matter. We don't have anything on there, so we'll just maximize. And now we have our canvas. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these suggestion boxes because I don't want them there. The reason I like to work in a full-size canvas is it'll give you an idea of how big your images are. One of the biggest challenges here, if you are going to print these especially, is to make sure that you're using a high enough resolution that when you print it, it doesn't come out all pixelated. So here is my poster. I'm going to start with just a title billing. I want to make a new one of these for my Legit or Legend series. And you will notice that the font looks incredibly tiny. That's because I'm using an 18-point font on a 3x2 grid. So even though it's not really 3 feet, obviously in front of me, the PowerPoint canvas gives me an idea of the scaling of how things are going to look at full size. So I'm just going to bring this way big and bring it up. I'll play around with the font and the sizing and things later on. I want to go ahead and get it centered, make the box the full size, and center my text there. So Legit or Legend is an activity that I do where my students have to decide if a story from history and movies is true or fictional, or how much of it is true and how much of it is fictional. So I'm kind of thinking about how I want to make this one look, and I was thinking what might be kind of cool is if this half of the poster was like a photo of a castle and this half was an illustration of a castle. So kind of the whole fantasy versus reality idea. I like to start at pixabay.com. It's a really cool images website. Lots of very high quality images, high resolution, totally free, royalty free. All they ask you to do is acknowledge the creator. That's it. So it's real cool. So I am going to search for a castle. And I'm going to go to category. And I want to start, oops, wrong one. I'm going to go to, that's the one. Under images, I'm going to start with photos because I want some real castle to start with my image, and that'll kind of filter out some of the more architectural ones, although it didn't look to change things very much. But that's okay. So I just want to find a castle. I know exactly what I'm looking for. I want the front face of half of a castle. Let's see if we have any luck finding what we're looking for. This one's pretty neat. This is the actual castle that they used as the model for, I believe this was Sleeping Beauty's castle. This might be Cinderella's castle at Walt Disney World, but this particular word that I can't say is the actual castle. So once I found the file I want, I can copy the image credit, and then I'm going to go ahead and download the biggest one possible, and then Google will drop it. If you're using Chrome, right here, I'm going to click on the arrow. I'm going to show in folder, which you can't see my folder, but oh, there's my folder. And then when I open my PowerPoint, back to where I was, and then I open that folder again, all I have to do is just drag the image right onto there. Now, obviously, that's not the size and scope I want, so I'm going to make it a lot bigger. PowerPoint is not great at resizing images. It's pretty good about it. But really, I would recommend doing this step if you are technically able. Do this in Photoshop, not in PowerPoint, because you'll get some better imagery from it. So I'm going to drop that right in the middle. And then I'm just going to use my crop tool. The crop tool will cut it down to where I want, and I know I want it in the middle. And then I'll cut it to the other edge. And then I will right-click on my image and send it to the back. So I have my legit half of the picture. I've got my castle right there. So now let's go back to Pixabay, and I'm going to search castle again. Oops. But this time, instead of images, you can do illustrations or vector graphics. Vector graphics are Really cool because they are infinitely scalable, meaning they can be as big as you want. The larger you drag it out, the more it just resizes automatically. So those are really cool. This one looks like it'll work. Fairy Tale Castle. Go ahead and download that one, and I'm going to download it as a vector graphic because, again, that's the infinitely scalable version. Once again, if you want to give them credit, you can copy that, you can paste it in the Notes tab or whatever on your PowerPoint file. So when we click back over to PowerPoint, we go back to our Downloads folder, we drop in that castle, quite a bit smaller. But when I make it full size, it scales perfectly. Now, I can crop this one just like I did with the last one, but in fact, all I'm going to do, I'll just send it to the back. That worked just fine. And then I can kind of play with the sizing as I'd like. I kind of want the castles to start in the same spot. There we go. I'm not loving quite how these matched up, but it'll work well enough. So that's kind of my general idea of what I was going for. Obviously, I could spend more time on it if I wanted to. For example, I remember that there was a pretty big spire at the top of this other castle. I might be able to align things a little bit better using the spire. Yeah, I like how that looks. Oh, much better. And so now it has a much more of a feel, and I'll drag the bottom down a little. Move that back over. So as you can see, it's just a matter of playing with your images until you get them exactly where you want them. And so you could continue to play around. You can mess with the fonts as needed. You can create the billing down at the bottom. Again, that's just a text box. And in order to get the billing sort of a feel to it, I do it in all caps. And then I just kind of change the font size every now and then. If you look at a billing, whenever it says like actor or director, the font size is a lot smaller. Kind of do the same thing. So what I was thinking of up here is changing the color on this side into white and changing this to white. And then there we go. So let's take a look at the full-size poster. That's not bad. Again, I'd spend a bit more time on the font work and things like that, and maybe a little bit on matching up the castles a little bit more. But I think it looks really good. It gets across the idea of the lesson. Students would be interested to know what's going on here, especially with the billing down at the bottom explaining the activity. You could mess around with this image. You could add a background, kind of smooth things out a little bit. But that's all it takes. So once you have your image, and you have your text box, and you have everything you need, and I'm going to put in a billing box just so we have one down here at the bottom. Even though, wow, spelled that very wrong. Alright, there we go, we have our billing box. So when you are ready to get it turned into poster form, you need it to be a singular image. And the way that works in PowerPoint is very simple. If you hold Control on your keyboard and push A, it will select all of your objects currently on the screen. Now we have a small problem that I didn't notice before. When I slid this image over, I didn't crop it. And the reason why it's important to crop is because when you do a select all, it's only going to save out what you have cropped. So that's an important thing. Another small issue we have is that we don't have anything on this side of the poster. So without that, it's only going to save up to the edge of this other castle. I want the full thing to be saved. So what I can do is if I just insert an invisible rectangle around the whole thing, and then I'm going to fill it with nothing. I'm going to make it empty, and then I'm going to send it to the back. Actually, I made it white. You can fill it with nothing. There it goes. And then you don't see it. So if you like that little frame on it, actually, I do kind of like that frame. I think I'll leave it on there. You can do that. Otherwise, you can turn off the outline as well and just hit no outline. So now when I do Control A, it's going to save everything within the bounds of that box. So it's going to work a lot better. So once everything is selected, you can right-click anywhere on the image. It didn't work, of course. Right-click anywhere on the image. There it goes. And save as picture. Now it is going to save this document all of your parts, the titles, the different pictures, the background, all together as one single image. You do want to save it as PNG, Portable Network Graphics format. That's the highest quality that you can save it in PowerPoint that you will need. And so you can name it whatever you want to name it. Just name it poster 2. And then we have our poster. It's done. It's now a single image. So if I go into my pictures and I go find poster 2, you can see very quickly in the background all the other ones I've been working on. And then I open poster 2 as just an image. There it is. Not bad. Not bad for 5 minutes of work or whatever that we threw together. So then you can go get it printed. You can take it to Office Depot, Staples, whatever, they will print them. But I recommend the site that I have been using lately that has been very useful for me is called bingbanners.com. They are located here in Southern California, and it's about $9 for a 3x2 canvas print. It came out beautifully, very high resolution, very sharp color. It'll last longer than paper. You can hang it on a wall more easily than paper on an outdoor wall, especially. Really, really good pricing here. Very happy with the work that they did. That was bingbanners.com. So there you go. Get out there and do it. Your homework assignment. Go make some posters. Can you imagine your classroom being the one in your school that had these posters waiting outside on the first day of school? Your kids are going to love it. Just like when they would walk into Disneyland, see that poster of the Matterhorn, oh, I have to go on that. Well, now they have to do History Mystery. They have to know what way the evidence is. Use that tease. Use Wienies to make your classroom the happiest place on Earth.